right, to school choice. In the bill, in the revenue bill, there's an expansion of funding for school choice. A pretty substantial expansion for funding of school choice. Will Flanders from Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is on the program to talk about school choice and specifically what appears to be the teeing up of court attacks on school choice. But before we get to that, I do have a question, Will. If the Common Council or MPS decides to hire outside counsel to attempt to sue the Milwaukee specific provisions out of the bill, since the increase in funding for school choice, a large part of it would go to Milwaukee, is there a risk that even the school choice portion of the revenue bill could be struck down by a Protasewicz-dominated Wisconsin Supreme Court?
Hey, good afternoon. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something that we're thinking about. Obviously, Milwaukee is choosing to stare a gift horse or look a gift horse in the mouth here. It's ridiculous, but it's not necessarily surprising. And I think that's certainly a risk. So, the celebrations have to be a bit tempered, though we'd hope there's a way that could be severed. Probably some of the attorneys in our office would be better to answer that question than I would, though.
But it is something that's on your mind. I'm not the
Absolutely.
only one who just conjured up this question. Because, I mean, the absolute duplicity that is being demonstrated, advertised by the Milwaukee Council and MPS in reaction to this bill. Don't ignore that stuff. So let's talk about what does look like an attack on school choice that ultimately results in a court case that would ultimately go before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. They're attacking it, and this is Wisconsin Watch. This is a deep-pocketed, left-wing funded hit operation, has been attacking school choice relentlessly with a series of articles that is finding its way into everybody's local newspaper, into the Newsbreak app that delivers local news specific to your zip code, to your phone. It's everywhere. And and they're attacking the problem, or rather the program, on disability access, on race, and on moral codes. So one of those three, or a combination of those three themes, appear to be what is being teed up as an attack on the school choice program entirely. So let's take them one at a time. I think the racism one is the least likely, because there's evidence to the contrary, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the most tired arguments that's ever used against the school choice program in the state. You just have to look at the demographic data of the students that the choice program helps to see the sort of lie in that. The school choice program has a greater percentage of minority students than public schools statewide, and it's limited. We'd like to see those income caps lifted, but there are income limits on the program, meaning that only those in the lower levels of income, below 300% of the federal poverty limit in Milwaukee, below 220% statewide, those are the only folks that could access the program. So to say that this is somehow discriminatory in the racial regard is patently false and ridiculous.
All right. And so you can look at numbers, and then you can also look at the disproportionate population of, particularly Milwaukee, low-income people who are Black, and those kids being accepted into school choice schools. But they're going to try it. And again, truth, you would think, would be an argument, but I'm not sure, especially given the political nature now of courts, whether truth is going to be enough. Truth is also the argument again. Go ahead, please.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, you see it being telegraphed across the board that they see this as an opportunity. The Protasewicz election, we talked about it before the election. It's definitely going to be an opportunity for school choice, for things like Act 10 to be undermined. Things we've come to love and appreciate in Wisconsin for over a decade now are absolutely under assault. And the sort of legality with someone like Protasewicz isn't necessarily the most important component. It's the political ideology.
Right, or some other members of the court, perhaps, as well. So that all of these are under the category of potential civil rights violations, right? So when they're teeing up potential civil rights violations, if they fail in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, one wonders if they're going to make a run again, despite previous rulings at the federal level as well. Disability. There is no law. State law says school choice schools cannot discriminate based on disability. State law says you cannot discriminate based on race. Federal law says you can't discriminate based on race or disability. And here is yet another attack saying that school choice schools exclude people with disabilities.
Yeah, again, this is patently false, and you just have to look at the state law on the school voucher program to see that it's false. The law says that, one, parents are the final decision maker. So schools, can have a conversation with parents about their ability to meet the needs of the student, and the parents get to make the final decision. If there's more students who want to enroll into a voucher school than there are seats, then there's a lottery held. It's a random choice. There's no ability for school choice schools to discriminate against students with disabilities. Again, this is arguments you heard a decade ago. These are not new arguments. And what we learned back then is that, choice schools, students that have disabilities that might be diagnosed in public schools aren't always diagnosed with those disabilities in choice schools because there's no financial benefit to diagnosing the student. There's a whole lengthy process to get the special needs scholarship that many parents and many schools simply don't have the ability to go through. You have to go through the public schools to get the diagnosis, and we know that districts like MPS have dragged their feet in providing that diagnosis for students that are in private schools. So there's not much incentive to go through the diagnosis process. There's greater enrollment of disabled students than reported in the data, and parents have the final decision in state law, no question about it.
So you're saying that if you have a disabled student and you want to take advantage of special needs vouchers, then you have to go through the public schools to get your child identified as disabled, and then you can apply for the special needs voucher.
Absolutely right. And, to the credit of a few districts around the state, there's been some that have worked with schools that, in more rural parts of the state. But we know in the larger districts, it's been a huge, lengthy process and very challenging to get those IEPs, which is what it's known as, the diagnosis that there's a disability.
So a school choice school cannot say no to a disabled student because a lottery process is ultimately used. If the school does not have the special structure, whatever, that would meet the needs of the student, the parent can say, I think I'm going to try another school choice school that's better. Public schools, by the way, can and do discriminate, claiming that they do not have enough resources for more disabled students. Schools in the public schools can also cream the crop and only have high academic performers, or reduce the amount of other people that they want to take from other districts through open enrollment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Right here in Milwaukee, we have what's known as specialty schools at MPS, and if you look at the website for these schools, it says right on the site, you must reach a certain test threshold in order to be admitted to this school. So right there, it's explicitly discriminating against students who have a lower academic proficiency. And as you mentioned, the open enrollment program, which is still the largest school choice program in the state, will set limits on the number of students with disabilities that they'll accept. This was the subject of a Will lawsuit a few years ago. Unfortunately, we didn't succeed in that one. But the point was made that the open enrollment program is, absolutely explicitly allowed to discriminate when they say they can't meet the needs of students, much more so than any schools in the voucher program can.
Right, and yet school choice schools cannot do that. One last thing before I run out of time, and that's the moral code. We shouldn't allow schools to have a moral code, because what if two lesbian students can't kiss in the hallways? I'm not kidding. They're actually saying that in these articles.
Yeah, it's absurd, and the reality is that why does school choice show all the benefits that we see? In a lot of instances, it's because they are able to have structure. They are able to have environments that are not unruly, that are not constant chaos like we constantly hear about in public schools. And having moral codes and moral standards that have to be lived up to is part of that. The contract between the family and the school. And so in order to go to these schools to get the advantages of them, you have to agree to these. And in some instances, there may not be an alignment. There may be folks that they say that we aren't able to or don't want to live up to that standard, and then a change can be made. But the reality is that there aren't students that are just being expelled for their moral beliefs. There aren't students that are being expelled because they are doing something untoward. It's simply because there's a contract with the school and the parent, and both sides have to live up to it, as we'd expect.
Yeah, you sign the contract and you violate the contract. You might be given a couple of second chances, but ultimately, if you continue to insist to violate the contract, that school then does, under state law, have the right to ask you to leave.
Absolutely, that's a good assessment.
This is coming. We're talking about it because this is now a series from a well-funded left-wing media outlet teeing up the arguments against school choice. This is going to hit the courts in pretty short order. Thank you so much, Will Flanders, for being on the program today.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.